Today, I want to start talking to you about interviews and the interview process. And in this video, we're going to discuss the initial interview, what to expect, and how to get the most out of your interviewing process. Justin here with Succeeded IT. I'm going to be your IT career coach, helping you start and grow a career in IT into something you love and to create the success you want. Let's get into it. So if you've been contacted by an employer or a recruiter, congratulations, because this means that they liked your resume and they want to vet you out a little bit more. So here's what you should expect. Typically, the first point of contact that you're going to receive from a potential employer is going to be by a recruiter. This will usually come in an email, and then that will be followed up by a scheduled phone call. That's the typical way things are done. Now, if it's a smaller company, the recruiter and the hiring manager, which would be the person that would be your manager, might also be the same person, but typically speaking, they're not the same. Usually there's somebody that's just recruiting and they're helping vet out potential employees before a hiring manager gets involved. Your initial call with the recruiter may or may not involve any technical questions. It really depends. In my experience, the first contact does not usually involve technical proficiency questions, but it is very commonly followed up by maybe them sending you a link to go online and sign in and take some sort of proficiency test. This is very common, especially for your first job, because they want to know, how you think and how you solve problems and what you know already how to do. Whether you have a proficiency test before an interview or you have some sort of proficiency test during an interview, you should always count on having a proficiency test. It's going to happen, so don't stress out about it. Don't be surprised when all of a sudden they send you to go online and take some tests for an hour. It's probably going to happen, and that's fine. Just don't sweat it. You're going to be fine. So here's some tips I have for you on how to get the most out of your initial call. Tip number 1, have something to take notes on and make sure you take notes during the call. That should be an obvious one. Tip number 2 is just to be friendly and to stay calm. Obviously, staying calm is a lot easier said than done once you're in that call. Sometimes it can be a little bit nerve-wracking, but I got a couple of tricks for you. Before you get on this call, just start to think in your mind that you're about to get on a phone call with somebody that you've known for a long time. You're going to be talking with a friend, and put yourself in that mindset that the person you're about to talk to is somebody that you're already familiar with, and just start speaking to them as if you've been friends for years, and this will really help you just calm your nerves. And remember that the recruiter actually wants to hire you because they have a job to do. They need to hire somebody. The sooner they fill the position, the sooner they can move on to other things. So really, they're there to help you get the job if you think about it. Another tip for you is to make sure you don't rush into answering anything too quickly. Sometimes they might ask you something that's really unexpected, but you need to make sure you don't rush and get anxious and just quickly blurt something out. This doesn't look good, and it's better to take your time and think about the question. One way to get a little bit more time to think is just to repeat the question to yourself. So if the recruiter says, if the recruiter says, which technologies have you worked with? You can just say, which technologies have I worked with? Well, let's see, I've worked with, blah, 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 blah. The point is to just take your time and make sure you have a fully succinct answer to the question, or this will give you more time to ask follow-up questions and qualify what the recruiter is asking in more detail so that you can give a better answer. My next tip is to remember that you're also interviewing the company that you're potentially going to work for. Is this company right for you? You should have some questions prepared in advance. Some common questions that I ask is, I ask the recruiter, how long have they been with the company, and has it been a positive experience? I like to ask them, how is their work-life balance? This gives you a good feel, based on the way they answer these questions, of whether or not they're happy. You can sometimes read between the lines if you're really paying attention, because a lot of the times the recruiters will tell you they love their job, it's so great, but they're not gonna say it's bad because they want you to work for the company. But if you ask these questions and they kind of joke about, oh yeah, there is no work-life balance, then this is a red flag, you know. So you can look out for stuff like that just by asking a few simple questions and listening to how the recruiter answers those questions. Another really good question to ask the recruiter is who the hiring manager is. And once they tell you, oh, Joe's the hiring manager, then you could also follow up with a question of what's the best way to start off on the right foot with the hiring manager? You know, how do I kick off this relationship in the best way possible? And the recruiter will usually gladly tell you how to start a conversation with the hiring manager in the best way because the recruiter wants to hire you. Other good questions to ask are just around typical things like benefits. Ask them, what benefits are included? You know, you could ask them about the company growth. So just prepare a few things that you're interested in knowing and have those ready for the call. One thing to keep in mind is that when you're asking these questions to the recruiter, try not to sound like you're reading them. Try to make sure it sounds like a genuine question. And if you can't make it sound like you're not reading them, then just maybe say, oh, I wrote down a few questions. Let me go through my list real quick so that the recruiter knows you've already prepared something. That's fine too. Just make sure you're being sincere. So if your call with the recruiter goes well, typically the next steps is that the recruiter will take the time to follow up with their manager on their end, and then they will together decide to reach out to you again and schedule a follow-up, either a call or an in-person interview, sometimes both. Sometimes the hiring manager will first take the time to have a call with you, and that person will vet you out, and then you'll go on again and have an in-person interview. Assuming that the call with the recruiter went well, you can expect usually to hear back from the recruiter or from the hiring manager within about 1 to 2 weeks. Additionally, I recommend sending a follow-up email after a couple days. This will remind the recruiter that he or she was talking to you. This gives you an opportunity to thank the recruiter for taking the time to speak with you, and this is an opportunity to ask any additional questions that you might want to follow up on. If you still haven't heard anything from the recruiter after a couple of weeks, it's a good idea to send one more email just to follow up and ask them if they're still looking for opportunities for people to join the team and express your interest in joining the team. Like I said in my last video about staying positive, if you've sent this initial follow-up email and then you send a reminder email after a couple of weeks, you need to stop there. That's it for today, and just remember that nothing's going to change unless you take action. So take action. If you like what I'm doing here, give me some likes and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to keep pumping out a new video every Tuesday, and I'll see you next week.